How's it going, everybody? A lot of you have been asking for two things in particular. Number one, what the heck are the wild card and World Championship group stage scenarios? And the second thing is predictions. Who do I think is going to win the spring major? Obviously, that's coming up in a week, so I figured it'd be important to start discussing it. Going to be doing those things in a unique way. When it comes to the actual predictions, over the course of the next week, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking the matches from that first round, because predicting past that, it's almost impossible on World Championship and LAN territory. And we're going to take two teams. I'm going to talk about their strengths and their weaknesses with the help of interviews from professional coaches, players, casters in the respective scene. And then I'm going to talk about who I think, after we present all that information, who would win. At the end of all that, when we get into the actual matches, I will then give you guys a video talking about the specifics, talking about the details when it comes to, hey, this team needs to win or these teams need to lose, so this team still gets into the group stage and all that kind of stuff. So we'll have breakdowns on that. But for now, the plan for today's video, we're talking about Furia and K-Corp, their strengths and weaknesses. And if you want to make sure you don't miss out on more of these things in the future, consider hitting subscribe and turning on notifications, as well as giving the video a like if you do enjoy it. But with that said, let's jump into K-Corp and talk about their strengths and weaknesses. Up first, K-Corp strengths. This one's kind of fun. I sat down with Eclipse from Endpoint for like 2 hours discussing strengths and weaknesses about a lot of European teams. And the way he described K-Corp is, quote, just weird, end quote. That's it. That's all he said. Jokes aside, what he means by this is their unpredictability. They are a team with the addition of Nolly that is very, very difficult to predict, especially on the offensive side of things. One of their biggest strengths is they do not have a defined formula to their play, and they are very tough to prepare for. A lot of times when teams are looking and trying to identify strengths and weaknesses to teams, they can usually pick a structured play style, and it doesn't seem like K-Corp has done that. Part of the reason is the newest addition. Obviously, they've only been together for this split, but the success they've had is due to their offense and that unpredictability. The ability to do these high-flying mechanics, a lot of aggression, and a lot of different plays is giving them the capabilities to score on teams when in the past they were very reliant on Astral. And that brings me to the second point of their strengths, is having multiple strikers on offense. Both Nolly and Astral are extremely capable of finding ways to score, and in the past it felt like Astral almost had to do too much. It reminds me of Ignite back in the day on Envy. He needed the help of Devo in order for them to look successful. And now with Nolly, you're getting a little bit of that paired, a little bit of stress alleviated from Astral having to go for all the solo plays, and Nolly, who again can do some pretty creative things. I remember when he had that corner pass back to himself and hit the most ridiculous redirect I've ever seen. That type of capability paired together seems to be quite confident on the offensive half. And when you're confident, it does make it tough to predict, as well as provide a ton of pressure. Their offense is the key piece to their roster, and the ability to apply pressure with a bunch of different looks has been pretty obvious. While it may not feel like passes are necessarily a specific thing they focus on, when they are there, the team does have plenty of spatial awareness and game IQ to make it exist and put some pretty nasty redirects in. The other side of things, and part of the reason why they are so successful on offense, is with all that speed and aggression comes a lot of disruption. Disruption is one of the things that this team is extremely capable of on offense. By average, about 400 to 420 boosts per minute, and the only way that is possible is by taking it from the other team. A lot of boost starving going on by K-Corp, and is allowing them and enabling them to continue that offense as well as apply pressure on a consistent level. After a certain point, the team just can't make saves anymore. They don't have any boost. So they're pairing that with demos, opening up a lot of opportunities in the field and causing a ton of disruption. K-Corp, those are the major strengths. Now on to their weaknesses. When it comes to their offense, and obviously a lot of aggression, that can also make things pretty detrimental when trying to get back to the defensive half. It's a little bit rushed and panicky on defense, and that difficulty then implies sometimes being susceptible to counterattacks. The other difficulty is if they are challenged and met in the midfield, they do tend to suffer. When they get on defense and they have that done, the things that they do so well on offense back to them, they tend to fall apart when it comes to their defensive rotations. A lot of this is actually due, in fact, to their second weakness, the way they alleviate pressure. A lot of it is booming clears and just massive clears downfield, and not always into safe spots like the opposing corner or to where a player is not already waiting on defense. When they get met in the midfield, they get absolutely shut down, and that pressure that's supposed to be alleviated for a few seconds actually gets denied, and then the aggression comes right back in front of them, forcing those kind of panicky situations because of the lack of boost. The other side of this, and this can be a good and bad thing, and the reason why I'm putting it on a weakness is because more often than not, I see it being a detriment to the team, And it's the fact that they are very emotional and nervous players at times. Kind of pairing these separately. Focusing on emotional players, the reason why I think it can be a good thing is when you have a team that is vibing well and spirits are high, the peaks are amazing and it shows that pop off. And they all feed off of each other and it leads to some really exciting things. But the difficulty is in big moments, the endorphin level going from a very high down back low can be a big problem. And we've seen that a few times in previous history with K-Corp. When they are playing extremely well, all of a sudden something bad happens and then another bad thing happens and then it keeps going and eventually it snowballs so far that they're completely out of the tournament. Even though just a little bit ago or a series ago, they looked absolutely fantastic and at least put up a close series. In LAN environments, when you only have 2 lives, especially with double elimination, those types of things will be your detriment. And it makes me a little bit nervous. So when they lack confidence, they tend to really show it on the field. So hopefully they can keep spirits high, and coach-wise with Eversax, he can be there to really lift those spirits. And then the last thing, and this is something that Clips really brought up, is out of all the European teams, he did mention that he thinks that K-Corp is going to be the most nervous on LAN. And I think it goes along with that emotional and mentality side of things, but you're talking a team that has a massive fan base. No joke, K-Corp is going to show up and have expectations of success and all that pressure and everything else. I'd be a little bit nervous. This first game coming out of the gate against a very strong opponent, which we'll talk about in just a sec here. I'm a little nervous for them in that regard as well. They need to find a way to score early and often, otherwise they might be in big trouble. Jumping to the other side of things, we're talking with Furia. We sat down with our resident South American caster boy in Chamaco. Had a lot to say about the roster, and rightfully so, as Furia was top 6. And that's the title of this video. Can Furia make top 6 again? And the first match in their way is K-Corp. 5th seed, looking pretty dang solid. Were they 4 seed? Maybe they're 4 seed. I don't know. Endpoint qualified weird. It's a long story. Either way, when it comes to Furia Strengths, we all know what it is. It has to do with No, we're actually going to talk about their LAN experience. Their mechanics we'll get to. We know they're mechanical, but I want to talk about their LAN experience. If you guys didn't watch my video a couple days ago, we put up a pretty cool stat about the player with the most consecutive LANs under their belt. And ironically enough, it's the King. It's King Card. 5 LANs in a row. He's been there for quite a while now. And since Dignitas and Energy are not there, Card does have the lead. He is at 5 LANs in a row. And this LAN experience at some point kind of just showcases how much international LAN experience they really do have. They even had a boot camp to the Winter Major. If you guys go back and check out some of their LAN scrims and their international scrims, you can see how quickly they are adapting and getting used to this new play style. This same thing can be said about the Spring Major and the scrims and the early boot camping that they're doing. Heck, we're going to be spectating some of their scrims later next week, or early next week, I think on Monday. Either way, they've been there and will be there a week in advance before matches, plus media day and everything else, and then the ability to play practice matches during media day as well. And something about South America, and this has been persistent since they came into the scene, they adjust very quickly. They learn very quickly when they're exposed to new play styles. And while you may think, hey, it's only been 3 months since the Winter Major, that is a pretty big contrast in seeing these teams, especially teams like Europe that have reformed towards the top and kind of consolidated their efforts. The exposure to it is going to be totally different. So I do think that LAN experience comes well, and it's paired with something that not too many other teams have, which Fury does, which is their next strength. They have 2 coaches. With their support staff and having 2 coaches, they worked with STL Mateus for the first 2 splits. And then in the 3rd split, they actually brought back Cairo, who was the coach for Loki back in Season 8 at Madrid. For those that don't know, the benefit of having those 2 coaches is while one is probably actively in comms, helping them and encouraging them behind the stage, the other one can be doing replay review, can be checking out practice scrims, can developing play style. These 2 and how they work together could be very advantageous if they have a tough matchup coming up and being able to be prepared sooner or better than other teams. It's something that I think may become more of the norm, where you have someone who's focused, dedicated to like replay analysis and in-game stuff, while the other one is mental, outside, encouragement, mentality stuff when they're playing. Obviously, best of both worlds if you have it, but I think you're going to see, hey, this is the game plan. You're the coach. You know how to talk these guys down or make sure that they're at a good level and a even-keeled space. I think it's going to be interesting to see how that support staff helps out. On the other side of things, they are similarly working on an established structure. This can be a negative as well, which we'll get into in their weaknesses. But they're not just playing reactionary, relying on their mechanics. And there's a reason why I'm keeping their mechanics to the very last part. This is a team that they're no longer just trying to force and react to teams. They actually have their own play style that they're forcing other teams to play at their pace. And being able to have like a good base level and something to rely on, especially in high pressure situations to go back to, is really important. They also involve multiple players on the offensive half. It's no longer just one player going for a crazy play. It doesn't develop, they go back to defense. There is consistent pressure, and they are trying to work on some more sustained offense paired with some pretty crazy mechanical stuff. Obviously, the pass plays and stuff are there, but they are a little bit telegraphed, which we'll talk about in a bit here. The best part, though, is the team has been together and has solidified this roster for a while, and the synergy between the players and the understanding they have together, kind of like a hive mind. They're working pretty well together. Last but not least is definitely their mentality. Solid at maintaining a positive attitude despite tough times. I've seen numerous times where they have a really tough matchup in a tournament. They fall short, but they claw their way back and keep themselves in contention. Furia is a team that is going to fight all 5 or 7 games. I do not think they are going to give up any easy rounds, which is also a really good thing for them, which means they always have a chance to stay in it. While also talking, Jan had some things to say about his teammates and said, Kaio is good at playing midfield, controlling the ball, and being a playmaker, while Card is very dependable on defense, which can also inflict damage as an attacker when needed. Again, knowing your role, but also not being afraid to move up and make a play. And when all else fails, Jan is a mechanical genius that comes alive and can turn the tide in their favor. In Shimako's own opinion, he has also stated Jan is the primary reason why Furia is able to go toe-to-toe against G2 and Queso at the Winter Major, which kind of reminds me a little bit of a weakness. I've seen teams in the past where they are reliant, and if you remove Jan as an element, what happens to the rest of the team? And that's where it kind of gets into their weaknesses. Things with Furia can be a bit telegraphed. Some of their passes are a little bit too telegraphed, almost identical to say, and you can expect them. They're a little bit easy to read, which can be a detriment. They got to find ways to mix that up with the high flying aerials and the air dribbles and everything else that they do. They need to find a way to make it a little bit less obvious. Although the structure can be viewed as a strength, there is also still need for polish. It is something that's being worked through. And if people identify what that tactic is, which if I can, so can others, it's going to be probably a problem. They need to find ways to mix it up. That's the biggest thing. The biggest thing that you notice is on defense, they like to air dribble out of defense a lot. While K-Corp is going to be booming the ball, Furia is going to be air dribbling it. And if K-Corp decides they want to play aggressive and challenge in the midfield, those air dribbles out are not going to give them the time they need to get back on defense and get boost. It could be problematic. So I'm curious to see on that evolution. Talk about that more in my verdict in a bit. The other thing with Sam in general is they do tend to struggle with bumps and demos. They don't play the aggression game. They have a really hard time because they do want to trap the ball and air dribble it. They find themselves isolated a lot, would make them very susceptible to demos. So something to be curious about there. And while they are known for their speed, their aggression, super fast, go, 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 this is something that I've noticed for them in a long time. I used to criticize their defense a bit. Defense has gotten significantly better. The problem, though, is if I find them playing against other teams that are just as fast, if not faster. I'm talking about the Moists, the G2s, the teams that are just go, phase. If they play against those teams and Furia's speed is matched, and I mean, that's it. Like, the issue I have with Furia, the biggest concern is if a team can play as fast as they can, there's nothing else that they can do. It feels like they can't pivot to something else. They can't play the slow down, methodical, and trap the ball and then do for something else, or force a defender in, or create demos in those opportunities with those air dribbles to open up. If a team can play as fast as them and challenge them, they're in trouble. Teams like Space Station, I think, give them a really hard time. Teams like FaZe, Moist, BDS, teams like that, I think, are going to be a really big, tough matchup for Furia. So, not being able to mix up the play style and air dribbles and stuff creates some big weaknesses. And it brings us now to the final decision between K-Corp and Furia. I think this is a really tough matchup because going in, I had an initial favorite. And then as I started doing more homework and doing some replay analysis and talking to coaches and this and that, it became more and more difficult. While one side has a really strong mental and the other one has a negative, playstyle wise, I think K-Corp has an advantage due to the fact that they are aggressive and can meet Furia at their game while also challenging and going for disruption. On the other side, Furia, if they hit some of those crazy shots, that's demoralizing and it may sink K-Corp. The other thing is, like, Astral back on LAN. Are we going to see what we've seen before? Nolly, a potential to stand up, obviously trying to prove something. So I go back and forth on this one. I want to say, just out in the open, I feel like out of all the matches, this could be one where Furia upsets, without a doubt. I expect it to probably go 5, and either Furia wins or K-Corp shows, hey, disruption in our offense is the real deal, and we smack you. If I had to be a betting man though, vamos. Let's go with Furia. Why not? I need an upset. I'm gonna go with Furia in 5, and that's what I got for you. So if you guys enjoy this type of content, if you enjoy this type of breakdown with the B-roll and all the footage and the gameplay, as well as the pros and cons, consider hitting subscribe and turning on notifications, as for the next 6 or 7 days, we're going to be doing that. Every single match in the first round, we're going to break down this team versus this team, their strengths and their weaknesses. And then at the end of all that, I'm going to tell you guys the wild card and group stage scenarios, so you know who the heck needs to win for your favorite team to make sure they go to the World Championship in Dallas. But with that said, hope you enjoy the content, and if you do, consider giving it a thumbs up, as well as hitting subscribe and notifications, as it does help me out greatly. And we hope to see you in the next one. Peace.